I was working in Yellowstone National Park during the winter of 2022 when the strangest and most terrifying night of my life happened. Winter in Yellowstone is no joke. Temps can fall to -40 degrees Fahrenheit, the wind is brutal, and the entire landscape turns into this endless white desert. Most of the park is closed, and only essential staff stay. I was one of them, a 25-year-old seasonal ranger named Elijah. Our crew lived in spaced-out cabins near Mammoth Hot Springs. At night, you'd hear nothing but the distant roar of geysers, the crack of frozen trees splitting open, and your own breathing. Isolation didn't bother me, but that winter, something else did. It was late January. The nights felt longer than usual, like the dark refused to lift. I had just finished a late wildlife monitoring shift. It was around 11:50 p.m. and the sky was painfully clear. Millions of stars, moonlight reflecting off snow so bright it almost looked blue. I usually enjoyed walks like that, but not that night. Halfway to my cabin, I noticed something strange. My footsteps sounded doubled. Every time I stepped, crunch. A half second later, crunch. At first, I told myself it was the echo off the hills, but Yellowstone doesn't echo like that in deep winter. Snow absorbs sound. I took another step. Crunch, crunch. Perfectly delayed, perfectly spaced. A cold wave of fear crawled up my spine. I turned around quickly, expecting a bison or maybe even a wolf shadowing me. But the road was empty. The snow behind me was smooth and undisturbed. No second set of prints. I stood there breathing fog into the air, trying to calm myself. "You're tired," I told myself. "Just go home." I walked again, faster. Crunch, crunch. It followed perfectly. Something was pacing me. I didn't run yet. Running on icy ground was a good way to break an ankle. Instead, I kept my eyes forward and walked as fast as I safely could. My cabin was only 3 minutes away, but the crunching behind me got louder, closer. I could feel the weight of it, whatever it was, pressing into the snow. I reached the wooden walkway leading to my cabin. The porch light flicked on automatically, washing everything in a warm yellow glow. The sound behind me stopped. All I needed to do was walk inside, close the door, and forget this ever happened. But something forced me to look back, and I wish I never had. There, standing about 20 yards away, was a figure. A man-shaped figure made entirely of ice. Not snow, ice. Clear, jagged, and shimmering in the moonlight. Its limbs were sharp and uneven, like frozen branches. It had no eyes, no face, no detail. Just a tall, spiked silhouette pointed directly at me. And embedded deep in its surface, through the crystal layers, were shapes. Dark shapes, like bones. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The figure tilted its head, an unnatural snapping motion, like cracking a frozen branch. A thin, crackling sound echoed through the air. I forced myself back into my cabin and slammed the door. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the lock bolt. Once it clicked, I stepped back from the door, heart pounding so hard I felt it in my throat. Then came the sound. A soft tapping, deliberate, against the wooden door. One tap every 3 seconds, like it was counting. I backed away until the couch hit the back of my legs. I sat down, staring at the front door, praying it wouldn't open. The tapping continued, slow, patient. At some point, I must have fallen asleep, more like passed out from fear. But the next thing I remember is waking to pale morning light filling the room. I almost convinced myself I imagined the whole thing, but when I opened the door, there were prints. Deep, claw-like indentations melting into the wood of my porch. But the marks weren't from feet. They were from something dragging itself. And beside them, faint but unmistakable, were droplets of frozen water shaped like fingers. 5 of them pressed right next to my door handle. I reported everything to my supervisor. He didn't laugh. He didn't dismiss me. He just stared at me for a long moment and said, "You heard the Echo Walker. Locals talk about a man who got caught in a flash freeze near Norris Geyser Basin decades ago. They say the cold preserved him, and now he searches for warmth." I transferred out of Yellowstone at the end of the season. I won't go back in winter. I won't even visit. Because sometimes when the air is cold enough that your breath turns to ice, I swear I hear it again behind me. Crunch, crunch. Always one step behind. My name is Jared, and back then I was 24, living alone in a small cabin outside Grand Marais near the Gunflint Trail. I was working seasonal wildlife tracking for the Forest Service, which meant long shifts, strange hours, and driving through empty, snow-covered backroads most people avoided. It was early January when it happened, the coldest winter I can remember. The county plow truck had carved a narrow path through the forest, leaving long stretches of thin ice road formed from frozen runoff. Anyone local knew to drive slow. Tourists didn't. I was neither careful nor careless that night. I just wanted to get home after a 14-hour shift in the snow. The sun was already gone when I pulled onto the ice road, and the sky was this deep, bruised blue. The temperature gauge blinked -22 degrees. My truck heater was barely keeping up, blowing air that felt like warm breath instead of heat. About 3 miles in, I saw the first sign something was wrong. A figure on the side of the road. At first I thought it was a deer, then maybe a guy hunting at night, but no one hunted in that weather. As I got closer, my headlights swept over something tall and motionless, too tall to be right. It looked like a man, but the proportions were off. He stood with his back to me, long arms hanging stiffly at his sides. He wasn't wearing a coat, just some old-looking clothing, like something from the early 1900s. Snow clung to him as if he'd been standing there a long time. I slowed down, rolled down my window an inch, and called out, "Hey, you okay?" Nothing. The figure didn't turn, didn't flinch, didn't breathe. Steam should have risen from his body at that temperature, yet I saw nothing. I pulled the truck a little closer. My headlights hit him full on. My stomach dropped. His skin was gray-blue, waxy, like frozen meat. And his neck was bent at an awful angle, as if it had snapped, letting the head hang slightly to the right. I should have driven away. Anyone with sense would have. But the Forest Service drilled one thing into us: never leave a stranded person alone. So I stepped out. Instant regret. The cold hit me so hard it felt like knives. "Sir?" I tried again, walking toward him. Still nothing. When I got within 10 feet, he moved. Not turning, not stepping, just shifting with this jerky, unnatural twitch, as if someone pushed his shoulder from behind. The head snapped another inch downward. I stopped dead. A noise rose from him then. A long, low creaking, like ice cracking on a lake. I backed up. Okay, I'm going back to the truck. But before I turned, he finally started to turn his head toward me. No, his whole body rotated like a single frozen block. The face ruined me. His eyes were wide open, rimmed with frost. His mouth hung in a silent scream, frozen into a shape no living person could hold. Snow was packed into the hollows of his cheeks, and he stared at me with this empty, accusing look that made my legs shake. I sprinted to my truck, nearly slipping on the ice, slammed the door, locked the truck, fumbled the keys. My breath fogged the glass as I tried to calm myself. Then he moved again. This time, he stepped. Not walking, gliding. His feet didn't lift. He slid across the ice toward the truck without bending a joint. I threw the truck into drive and floored it. The wheels fishtailed, gripping the ice just enough to push forward. I didn't look back again until I'd driven at least half a mile. When I finally dared glance in the mirror, there was nothing there but falling snow. I got home shaking, convinced I'd hallucinated from exhaustion, but sleep wouldn't come. Around 3 a.m., I heard a sound on my porch, a soft scratching, like ice claws dragging across wood. I grabbed my flashlight and crept to the front window. There were footprints, bare footprints, leading in a perfect line to my front door. I didn't check outside until sunrise. The prints were still there. And at the end of the trail, right on my porch boards, was a frozen puddle shaped like the outline of a human face pressed into the snow. I told my supervisor the next day. He didn't laugh. He didn't say I imagined it. Instead, he sighed and said quietly, "You saw the ice road walker. Locals say he died in a blizzard 100 years ago, broke his neck falling through thin ice. They say he wanders the road looking for someone to take back with him." I moved out of that cabin in the spring, but deep winter still scares me. Because every year, when the temperature drops below zero, I sometimes wake up to the sound of creaking ice right outside my window. And every time, I worry that if I look outside... My name is Lucas. I'm 27 now, but this happened when I was 24, living just outside Fairbanks in a rental cabin that sat at the edge of thick spruce forest. It was quiet, isolated, exactly what I liked. I worked maintenance for a lodge about 20 minutes away, so most nights I drove home on a narrow, snow-covered road that barely anyone used after dark. It was mid-February. Temperatures hovered around -30 degrees Fahrenheit, the kind of cold that hurt your teeth. That night, I stayed late fixing a generator. By the time I headed home, it was already pitch black, and snow was falling in thick curtains, so thick it felt like driving through static. I had the radio playing low, trying to shake off the feeling that the dark outside was pressing against the windows. Something about the storm felt wrong. The flakes weren't drifting, they were dropping straight down, fast, as if the sky were pouring them out. 10 minutes from home, I saw something strange on the side of the road. Snow was piled unusually high, like a mound. At first, I thought it was a drift, but the shape was too smooth, too rounded, and it looked almost like a person. I slowed down, squinting through the falling snow. There it was, a tall, human-shaped figure made entirely of packed snow. No face, no details, just the silhouette of a man, watching the road. I thought maybe some kids had made it earlier in the day, but no one built snowmen in this cold. Your hands would freeze in minutes. I drove past it slowly, feeling my heartbeat start to rise. As my headlights slid off the figure, I swear, for half a second, I saw its head tilt. Just a little, enough to follow my truck. I shook my head. "You're just tired," I muttered to myself. I cranked the heater and tried to focus on the road. 2 minutes later, something appeared in my headlights again. Another snow figure. Same shape, same height, same smooth, faceless head. Only this one was closer to the road. So close, I had to swerve slightly. My stomach twisted. I pressed the gas just enough to increase speed without losing traction. Then I saw a third one, standing right in the center of the road. My foot slammed the brake. The truck skidded, tires biting into snow and ice. I came to a halt just 10 feet from the figure. This one had arms, longer than they should have been, hanging unnaturally low. The snow around it hadn't been disturbed. No footprints, no drag marks, just standing there, as if it had grown up from the ground. I sat frozen, staring at it through my windshield. The wind howled against the truck, pushing snow sideways. In that storm, the figure didn't move, didn't shift. But I felt it watching. And that's when I made the biggest mistake of my life. I flashed my high beams at it. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, the thing leaned forward. Not stepped, not fell. It bent at the center like a hinge, its faceless head lowering toward my truck. I panicked and swerved around it, tires fishtailing as I punched the gas. I didn't look back until I reached my cabin driveway. My hands were shaking so hard, I could barely put the truck in park. I ran inside, locked the door, and tried to convince myself it was some kind of weird optical illusion. Snow shapes sometimes formed unexpectedly in storms. But 10 minutes later, the motion light on my porch flicked on. I crept to the window and moved the curtain just an inch. A snow figure stood at the edge of the driveway. My blood turned to ice. It hadn't been there when I parked, and there were no footprints around it. I backed away from the window, heart slamming against my ribs. I shut off every light and sat in the dark, listening to the storm batter my house. My phone had no service, storm interference. I felt trapped, like a mouse waiting for something to claw into the walls. Around 1 a.m., the storm finally quieted. The silence was worse than the wind. Then I heard it. A soft, slow brushing sound. Something dragging lightly across the outside wall of my cabin. I held my breath. Brush. Pause. Brush. Pause. As if something tall were circling the house. The sound stopped behind my bedroom window. I stood there, staring at the frosted glass, too terrified to look. That's when the temperature in the room dropped instantly, like someone opened a freezer door. Frost began spreading across the inside of the window, tiny cracks of ice crawling outward. And then, something pressed against the glass from the outside. A head. I stumbled backward, grabbed my boots, and ran into the bathroom. I locked the door even though I knew it wouldn't help. I sat on the floor until dawn, listening to the sound of snow shifting outside. When sunlight finally came, I crept to the bedroom window. The glass was cracked, and beneath the crack, in the frost, something had melted into shape. A long handprint, too wide, with fingers that stretched unnaturally long. I left Alaska by the end of the month, and even now, whenever it snows straight down, fast and heavy, I feel that same pressure on the world, like the sky is watching me, like something in the storm remembers me. And maybe it's waiting for winter to bring me back.
Don't forget to subscribe for more scary stories. Thank you for watching.